Welcome to another episode of Feed the Trolls. And you know how it works. We try and find a topic that everyone is talking about on the internet and break it down. And this one is a little bit of a palate cleanser because it's a topic that comes up all the time. Every single time an event is announced and the talent lineup's announced, there is a thread on Reddit, on HLTV, on social media, and everyone has a comment about it. So we figured today we can have a conversation about talent in Counter-Strike. And I'm going to introduce our guest. I realized the other day that we actually don't do this enough, unless we're Thorin. Thorin has no shame. He'll always say what he's done. But Jazz, you are a major host. You have hosted a Counter-Strike major. Lots of people haven't done that. That's a huge thing. You've also hosted majors in other games. And I feel like we never really introduce ourselves like that, again, unless you're Thorin. But you have done a hell of a lot in a very short space of time, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I first entered the esports space, the biggest question was whether or not I would be given the same kind of opportunities as other people. And that's not me saying that I expected to be gifted opportunities. I knew from the very beginning when I started as a host, I was volunteering for events. I just needed to be able to showcase how much I love CS and how passionate I am about esports and how much I care about helping to educate the normies and grow our scene. So to be able to do that in not only CS, but then also go outside of CS to teach some of the young up-and-coming players in other esports titles like Rocket League, for example. Every time I do a Rocket League event, those players walk away from that having learned so much on how to do interviews. Like, they don't get media training. Right. So for me, I love the opportunity to be able to kind of help the younger generation learn that, you can't just say, no, I'm not doing an interview because you don't want to. So I feel like very, very privileged to have opportunities to be able to do this.
It was such a kind, sweet answer. Oh, we'll break you by the end of the show.
She was like an auntie or something to all these players. Like, come on, now I'll teach you how you do it. Let's set you up with an interview.
So nice.
Yeah.
Like, you're all assholes. You never want to answer our questions. Right. We get cross with you.
Sure.
Also, what I do find quite interesting, though, because I don't know if this is, I think this has actually happened to every single person who's moved into the talent space. But the moment, especially Counter-Strike specifically, the moment you're announced, the fans tend to go, okay, but who the hell are you? You know nothing about CS.
Sure.
I mean, Veracity, you started as a referee, if I'm not mistaken. Like, you were doing the grunt work behind the scenes before you moved into in front of camera.
Yeah, I used to admin loads of events. I started with UK events, and again, I started off volunteering. And for me, it was because I was a huge esports fan, and I still am. But for me, the most fascinating thing was watching events and trying to understand what actually goes on behind the scenes to make this event what it is. So I started off with adminning, and then I knew I always wanted to do hosting and interviewing, but I just never had the confidence to actually be on camera. So for me, having the opportunity to see what goes on behind the scenes and always getting to know the players, being in that environment alone, I had a better understanding of what production go through. A lot of talent nowadays will complain, oh my God, why are we in so early? But I was one of those people that was literally the first one in before the lights are even switched on. And after players are done doing their games and after the talent have gone home for the day, the admins were the ones that would stay behind and clean the booths. Players would leave banana peel, empty bottles. I've seen it all.
They think the fairies come and take those away overnight. Someone has to pick that up, mate. Just put it in the bin. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly.
By the way, the thing you're saying there as well, Sam, about how when it gets announced, by the way, that's just a human reaction. That happens to men as well. If someone announces it, I'll even tell you, I understand the fan logic of it because I do the same thing in MMA, which is I don't watch all the MMA fights, right? I just watch the big ones. And so when they have that thing where they're not sure who the champion should fight and they pick an up-and-coming fighter, oftentimes they are picking a guy who's actually hot shit. He's going to be fucking amazing in 6 months. But if I don't know him very much, my initial reaction is oh, who's he? I want to see a name I know fight this guy because then my brain goes, and I know it'll be a great fight. So one thing I'll just point out, if someone's watching who is a male pro in the game, if, in your case, they know you from the past where you've, been at LANs they were at and they've worked with you, actually, one thing you can do, if you ever see an announcement like that, if you actually just say something oh, I know this person, and they're actually super chill, or they're really good, or they're a real fan of the game, that's what I often try to say, that actually can go so far to getting a little bit of goodwill from fans, because I understand that aspect of why they don't want different new people, but I actually do think, I always say this to Sam, I actually think, even though initially they're actually hostile to all new talent, and they think everyone's a player, but none of us, because we're not all like, top of face it, none of us deserve to talk about CS, even to do an interview for some reason. I always say, despite the rep that CS, the game in matchmaking has, it's super toxic. And if you talk, everyone's like, go back to the kitchen or whatever. Actually, I think talent work, once people get to know you a little bit, I actually think it's one of the most welcoming games to women. Almost every woman I've seen come in and be a host. Even people like Shocks, who people know her main gigs in League of Legends. So yes, fans don't respect League of Legends, but they love her. Whereas I'll tell you, when Frankie Ward was already established in CS and she went and did Dota, they were treating her like she was a moron. When Richard Lewis does other games, they were like, who the hell is this? It's like, he's like a 20-year veteran. So I actually think like CS is actually one, in theory to me, one of the more welcoming games. Do you find that experience? What about the two of you? You've obviously come in from the outside from other games, even if you already did love CS anyway. You'd be perceived as coming from other games. You know, what was the experience like for you?
I'll jump in here though, because so I don't even think that this is necessarily just for women, because obviously there's two ladies here. So, but I just think from a CS sort of talent point of view, I always wanted to be in Counter-Strike. I'd done CS in South Africa, and much like Veracity, it started behind the scenes, like moved forward. And then when I started working overseas, I was kind of told, well, there's no space, go do other games. And to stay in the space, I did that. But when all of that was happening, all I ever wanted was to work in CS. And the reason is, one, obviously I love the game, but two, I do think CS talents are allowed to be themselves. And that sounds ridiculous.
No, it is.
But I know, and I mean, obviously, Veracity, I've kind of moved away from most of the other games, but you're still working in other games. So I understand that you have to be PC here because you can't be. But I used to get super annoyed. Do you know how many games I've worked where I have been told what to wear, how to talk,
right?
I have literally had stylists, and I have arrived, and they want me in a little dress with heels, and I'm like, that's cool. I don't wear little dresses and heels. Like, I can't walk in heels.
Okay.
I literally look like a goat trying to walk up a mountain.
Okay.
Like, so, but that's what they want because they have a very specific look in mind, and then they don't understand why I don't want to do it.
At least
and
it is possible for you to be the GOAT host then.
Oh, I like that. That was big.
Okay. Keep going.
But it was something that bugged me. And then also, like, there was a lot of times in other games where I'd sort of be pulled aside from a desk hosting point of view and be like, oh, because I'm a little bit sarcastic and I like to give people a hard time sometimes and like joke around with analysts. Oh, maybe don't do that. Like, we need to be.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've had it where it's like, oh, actually, like, we need to just keep this a little bit more serious, or like, let's not do. And you're sitting there being like, and that was for me. I just wanted to get into Counter-Strike because I think it's the one place where you are allowed to be yourself, and it feels. I felt like CS was a game that wasn't trying to be a sports. Like, they were like all these other games, like, we want to be like a sports broadcast. It all has to be super clean, super polished, which I think a broadcast should be. But also, like, we're going to script everything down to the T. No one's going to have a personality because we're so afraid of like going off somewhere. I mean, I'll say it. It was Overwatch when I had to do that for a year.
Right.
Like, it was. They were very controlled, and I think that's problematic, and that was something I didn't want to do. And for me, when I finally was like, I'm going full in on Counter-Strike, I had reached a point where I said I was going to retire. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'll go home. And the reason I said that was because I was like, I just feel like I'm not myself. Like, I'm such a shitty version of the host that they want. I'm never going to be polished for TV. I'm not going to be that. And I think that there are hosts that are that and they're great, but I'm not that. And I want to be a little bit out of the box. So I do think for me, that was why Counter-Strike was so attractive, because I could be myself. And I don't know about you, Veracity, but it also helps when I found people in Counter-Strike, other talent players are also a lot more welcoming. Like, they're a lot, if they can see that you love the game, they will talk to you for hours and they will help you. There's no, I wouldn't say I've ever met like someone who's a complete arse and doesn't want anything to do with you. Most of them are just excited that you love the game as much as they do.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like for me, I completely agree with you, Sam. CS is one of those games where it's going to sound so cringe, but it's like, really is like the game of the gamers. Like, every other event I seem to do, you're completely right. They say, we want more of a professional approach. We want it to cater to the normies. So make sure you explain stuff to people that might be new players. Right. But then also, like, if you start cracking jokes on the broadcast, you'll hear a producer in your ear mid-broadcast being like, we don't have time for this. Like, you need to speed it up. And the first thought in my head is always like, the people that are watching this are not going to be mums and dads. The people that are watching this are gamers, right? Yeah. The people that are watching this are the very same people that will be cracking the exact same jokes with their friends. And that's exactly what you want people to feel at the end of the day. Like, to watch a broadcast and feel like, I am amongst friends. But as soon as you make it a very strict, rigid broadcast, you take away that element of it completely. And for me personally, it ends up being a lot less entertaining from a viewer standpoint as well. And I feel like, so I have ADHD. So for me, being able to show my energy and being able to make jokes and go off a script, like, I'm not saying obviously don't have a flow, like a show flow or anything like that. You know what I mean? Of course, you're still going to stick to the, flow of things. You're still going to get the work done. You're still going to hit those key points. But telling me that I can't be myself is like trying to, I don't know, suppress the version of me that just makes me me. So I completely agree with you. I feel like that's what we need more of. And I would love to know from a production standpoint, is it because, it's a request from the sponsors? Is that why we have to be super professional at all times? Because you don't want to piss anyone off? If that's the case, then tell us. But I got to a point where every other event I do now, when I have my meeting with my producer, I will say to them, what is the kind of guideline on this? Do you want it to be a super strict professional broadcast? And I will tell them from the very get-go, because I like to have fun on a broadcast. If I'm not having fun, then my analysts aren't having fun. If my analysts aren't having fun, you bet your ass the viewers are definitely not having fun. So I think that's a really important kind of conversation to get out of the way and understand from a TO perspective, from a broadcast perspective, and also sponsor perspective.
By the way, as an example of how in CS we definitely are allowed way more leeway. When we did the Salisa Masters event, which is obviously the first event I've ever done with Jasmine.
Oh my God, I loved it.
There's an interview that was done with Glaive really early on, before the match. Think about this, the pre-match interview. And so I told her, here's the question I want you to ask him. Basically just say something like, Thorin thinks he shouldn't even have an international team. He's about to play the match with them. You should just leave and go back to like a Danish lineup, and then you might have a chance to get to the top again. And that's why, if you remember, what you might remember is when she asked Glaive this, he actually played it off like, oh, Thorin, my old, but he's just joking. By the way, I wasn't joking. Like, I will say it. Now I should pretend I'm joking because he won the fucking event. I look stupid now. But that's pretty spicy. There's no way in another game you could go up to a person. You should probably just get out of this team and kick all these players. Anyways, how are you thinking about the match? Like, that's not the same vibe. But I'm with you, though. The reason why I even did my style in CS, it's not like people told me you can go crazy. But I just decided, like, I've been in this industry long enough. Like, I can do other things than this. If I'm going to do this, I don't want it to be, like, really boring and, like, uptight and all sitting there and no one talking in the green room and then, yes, and the next graphic. Like, I'm only going to do it if I can have fun, if I can express what. That is the best part about doing the event. Like, when you're having fun like that, the event passes in a blink. It's awesome. You're in the game. You're engaged with it all. Yeah. I absolutely agree.
That was literally one thing that I said to Thorin and Richard was the green room experience at Elisa Masters was unlike any green room experience ever.
Sure.
Like,
hope you weren't secretly recording it or we're all done. So.
Those were all cancelled.
Exactly.
Honestly, like I completely agree with you. The green room experience, that's what I mean. Like, it's not just for show. It's not just on broadcast. Like, the personalities you end up seeing on camera are the personalities off camera as well.
Yes.
Except if you're Maui. I feel like Maui's a toned down version of what he is in the green room.
Which is mad because people think he's just unhinged on the broadcast, Sam, but they don't know. Actually, he does still try to bring it down a notch, doesn't he? He does. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there we go. I'm letting out all the green room secrets. Do you think also, like, because we were talking, I mean, when you mentioned that, so that's another thing for me, like players in Counter-Strike, you can have a conversation with them before an interview. And I can say, I'm going to be a little bit of a shit. Like, I want to ask you, like, I want to try this. So I'm going to ask. And they're, for the most part, most of them, if you know them well enough, they'll be like, yeah, cool, I'm game for it. I know, like, a great example wasn't necessarily interviews, but when I had Katie on the desk at Blast, like, people watched a lot of that stuff and don't realize that a lot of it was discussed beforehand. Like, the jokes were kind of, I didn't go in there and try to throw the poor guy under the bus. Like, we did talk about what I was going to say, and he was game for it. Like, he thought it would be funny. Obviously, like, some of the stuff also then it grows on it. But I do think that, like, our players are a little bit braver. And I wonder as well if it's because for a lot of other esports, it is developer owned. So the players are
probably
terrified. Yeah, because there's only so many events you can do a year. And if the developer decides that they don't like you as a pro player, you're probably not going to be able to do it because they do have the ability to stop inviting you to the events. So there's that intense fear. And because it's only like 3 events, the players are a lot more shy and a lot more scared to upset anyone because they feel like there's more pressure maybe on their shoulders to represent the game and not be silly. And also because I think a lot of the other devs, and Veracity, you've worked on a lot of these games, the developers are like so precious. They don't want a single negative thing said. And that obviously terrifies players to have a personality as well.
Yeah, I think also when it comes to the developers, they don't want a single bad word said about the game. Understandable. But we're in esports. this is like the whole thing is surrounded by tech. There are bound to be things that go wrong. There will be bugs in the game. There will be problems with the broadcast. So I feel like it's so silly to view it as like doing an interview with a player and for him to complain about like, oh, my monitor was flickering. I can't predict that you're going to say that. If he says that, he says that. Like, it's part of the experience. It's an honest answer. And I don't believe that we should be kind of, skirting around questions like that out of fear that they might maybe critique an element of the game that everybody is talking about on social media anyway. So I don't really know why that's the case, because at the end of the day, problems happen. Tech issues happen.
By the way, the thing you're saying as well about like essentially like preloading the interview before so the player knows, like you don't by the way, this is where the problem is. Obviously you want part of the show to just work like a show, like wrestling, right? So you don't want people to think, well, that's a fake fight, but then they also get caught up in the storyline, so they really do think that you're just like talking to Bobsky on his first event and then going like, remember when you were benched from Australis? And he's like, oh, what the fuck? Oh, that's really hurt. No, you obviously told him before, I'm going to make a joke, I'll tee you up on that, So yeah, first of all, there's that. Yeah, of course. And then also the other thing is, I'll actually give credit, because I was there in the early days when actually interviews really were just like right before the game, what about this? And then even in CS, the two people I think actually changed that was, one was OJ Borg, because he comes from radio. He doesn't even do this full time, guys. He only works ESL events and the big ones. So he does that. The joke is almost like for fun on the side, to not just be in the UK with his family and his fucking radio show. He does it as like a little holiday. He comes away. And so he would always, if you know him, he's like an extrovert. He would always, before the interview, be like pally with the players, and he could just get them like, right, I'm obviously going to tee you up, like, say you're going to beat that guy. And then the other one actually is Frankie. And what's funny is, what you're exactly talking about, Sam, was what she got in trouble for. Everyone might remember there was an iconic interview she did with Alexi B really early on, where she kept saying to him, like, that, like, what happened on train? And then he sort of like, oh, just didn't really go that well. She's like, no, I'm not just going to let you go on that one. I want to know, like, what happened on the T side of your calling? And the people were like, she's bullying him. She's going too far. It's like, she almost certainly before was like, look, people are like online are questioning your performance there. Like, I'm gonna basically ask you the hard questions and you're gonna see what you answer. Similarly, she did a skit once that she got in trouble for by idiots too, where she was in the crowd doing crowd work, which everyone knows is death, by the way. It's really hard. Like, even if they're funny and you have the right guy before the camera goes on, you put it on and suddenly it's like, sorry, I didn't hear you. Like, it's a nightmare. So she cheated up a kid, and I can already tell you, I wasn't even there, but I can guarantee you I know what happened. She famously interviewed a kid and then stole his pizza and ate it. Do you remember this? It was back in the day. And everyone was like, what the hell? Imagine you get interviewed, stole the pizza. She almost certainly told him before, can I just have a bite of the pizza at the end to make it funny? There's no way that was impromptu, guys. See, I know I'm pulling back the curtain here to show you the Wizard of Oz, but this is actually why I think now we've gone the other way. Now players and fans can be completely unhinged on CS broadcasts. We're fully out of the box now, guys.
Where do you think it was though that the line was kind of drawn and players and everybody started feeling like, okay, we could be more ourselves? Or do you think CS was like that from the very start?
Listen, she queued me up at the beginning of the episode. Part of it is, this is one of the roles I play. Right? I'll tell you a fucked up analogy, right? Everyone's seen the movie Top Gun. One of the concepts in fighter pilots, right, is because the missile that the guy gets when he has the target lock secured, when he fires the missiles, right, it's heat seeking, so it goes into your plane. You can try and dodge, but the missiles can obviously move really fast. So there's a concept called a flak grenade, which what you do is when you know the guy has the target lock on you, you press a button and it shoots out basically a bunch of metal into the air. And the idea is, at the last second, the missile will sometimes like lock onto the metal in the air behind you and won't just go straight into your plane and blow you up and kill you. It'll just blow up to the side and you might have a chance to escape. I have essentially been the flak grenade of Counter-Strike the entire time I've been on camera, because since I'm going to go so much further than other people, I'm pushing it out to here. So now suddenly, even if you go to there, which would be crazy before when the line was there, that's not as bad as me. So that's not as bad. Like, the joke is, people like Yanko, they're not even edgy in this modern day. They're actually just mild jokes, right? That used to be mega edgy, to make a comment that a player was bad or you think they should be cut from the team. That would be like threads everywhere. Like, it's just unprofessional behavior. So I do think some of it's not just me. I'm using that example because obviously I've seen it happen myself. But I do think it actually is that we have sort of like built a culture within the game that like there's a very wide bandwidth of who you can be on a CS broadcast. By the way, you can also, like some people do, you could just be the guy who wants to wear a suit and just does it very professionally, breaks down the tactics, and we love those people too.
Do you think though in the beginning, if I think back to like right at the beginning, and this was with Dota as well, where it was very like D-man, red eye, suits and tie,
yeah, of course,
super serious. And I sometimes wonder if it was because at that stage, it was, and I don't want to say that there was more on the line. I think it was a very different type of pressure, but we were in this world where no one really knew if this was going to succeed. There was not as much money. There was this desperate need to like make something good.
Well,
and we
people also wanted to be on TV and be in the mainstream. You're right. That was the thing. Yeah, for real.
So you do it super seriously.
Yes,
like we're gonna copy sports broadcast because that's the only sort of vision we have. And then I kind of feel like over time, and we saw it more in Counter-Strike and Dota than anywhere else, where people started going, oh, hold on, like now they know me a bit better. If you think about it, I remember Machine desk hosting in a suit and tie.
Yep.
Now Machine is like super model style.
Machine style, by the way, is incredible.
By the way, that's even something that did happen. A famous scandal was when I did the first CS major. They told me, because it was DreamHack, and their whole ethos was like, we're just gamers, it's a lad. They were like, just wear whatever you're comfortable in. So I wore a Lakers jersey, right? Joe Miller himself, legendary commentator, just flamed me on Twitter. Like, are they aware he's just wearing a sports jersey? And so what's hilarious is, back then, that was scandalous. Whereas, as you say, Machine went from being like that when he had to be, to now he comes like dressed in a sleeping bag or whatever, and everyone just plays it off. Like, yeah, it's cool. Just keep going. Go for it, mate. Whatever.
But this is the thing. So I feel like we started to feel ourselves a little bit. And also, I like to think that maybe, and this is something that I've said before, and you don't see it with like a lot of the developer run esports, but it is that thing of, for me, what a broadcast should be is like, we all sit in like, and this is something that I think is really important. We sit in TeamSpeak or Discord or whatever with our mates, watching these games, talking shit. And I've always said that and this was like something for me, I want my desk to be like those conversations. I want you to feel like you're sitting in TeamSpeak with your friends, and we're talking about what we're watching. And I think we're starting to get to that point where we found like a happy medium, and more so in like the more established games. But I do think that was what was lacking in the beginning. And then the change has happened in maybe Counter-Strike and Dota. And maybe that's because there's lots of TOs and they're competing for eyeballs, so they're willing to experiment versus other games. But I look at other games where it is very much like girl in cocktail dress and heels on stage, men in suits, everyone be very positive, no one say anything mean, stick, like this is super serious now. And I think that's, developers are just absolutely terrified because they've spent so much money on it. Whereas Counter-Strike, we're established enough now where we kind of know what I say, we know what the audience wants. I never know what they want, because one moment they want you to be, they want more opinions, and then the next day they don't want any opinions. Yeah.
There's honestly no pleasing.
I do think that that's where we're kind of at. We're like, I think CS has matured enough that it's found a place where people kind of know that they can, I suppose, I want to say push the envelope a little bit. I don't think we push the envelope as much as, like you mentioned, Thorin, when it was like Machine hosting and you had Sponge on the desk with Thorin, it used to be really freaking insane. And I do think we lost that a bit along the way. So maybe finding that middle ground is kind of where we're at now in the development of broadcasts for Counter-Strike.
I almost feel like at the start of CS, there was this pressure to prove to everybody that is watching, that is outside of esports, prove to them that this is a real thing. Prove to them that this is a sustainable thing. Prove to them that this is a professional thing. And they tried so much to make it as similar to a sports broadcast as possible that you end up trying so hard to convince all of these people this is a legitimate thing. It is here to stay. But now I feel like CS has almost found its own identity. It's so sure of the fact that, you know, we've been here for so long. It's been an esports that's continued growing. But you almost don't have to prove it to anybody that's watching. Like, people are allowed to be themselves. Like, I feel like TOs are trusting the talents a lot more because it's an established esport, and we don't have to prove to the outside world that, you know, this is as legit as sports broadcast, because we know it's as legit as a sports broadcast. We know that the fans are passionate, and we know that this is only going to continue growing. So I think that's probably the key difference.
I'll reframe that for you, Thorin. Do you think, though, that so in the beginning it was we need to be taken professionally and we need to show everyone out of here that there's legitimacy because this is how we make money? Then we found that like place where it was like, cool, now we are actually legitimate and we're doing this cool shit. And then there was a time where, like we mentioned, it was quite spicy and a little bit unhinged. And then it suddenly kind of went back to corporate. Do you think that was when a lot of investment and money came in and the decision makers kind of went, oh shit, now we have to be really careful, and you know, we can't risk having Thorin go on a rant on the desk, so we need to cut that down? Do you think that happened?
I do think there's an element of that because, like the story I referenced earlier, Joe Miller, by the way, it was always like a mate of mine. He wasn't doing that to actually like fuck with me. What he was basically saying was like, "This is the first major, and you're just dressed in a sports jersey. What will people think?" That was almost what he could have completed the sentence to say. Because back then, I'm sorry, because Counter-Strike was small and esports was small. By the way, to get 100K on a broadcast was mind blowing. Never mind millions for the major finals now. So back then, the perception was, oh, Twitch can't be like the final place this goes. The aim is get big enough that we get noticed by BBC, Television Sky in America, Turner. We want these ESPN. We want these people to say, "Oh, you're real. You're a real sport." So, like the other sports, like darts or whatever, we're going to bring you into the circle, and you'll have your thing. And so, what they were almost prepping for, it's like that old thing, dress for the job you want. They thought if we make it look like the sports broadcast, same format and everything, same analysts, same hosts, same style, then they'll see it, go, not only is this legitimate, but wow, we could take this straight away and we could put it on TV. Whereas actually, I think, by the way, that has proven just not to be the case. Spoiler, when I did E-League was a great product. The reason it never succeeded in terms of viewership is all the people who already watched Counter-Strike watch it on Twitch, so they just watched it on Twitch, and it had to also be American and have that specific cable network or whatever to be able to watch the show. So actually we realized like TV wasn't the thing. And by the way, there's also an aspect which is totally human about that. If you know the old school people who did this, listen, they definitely had loads of passion for the game. But I can tell you, if you ever had a chat with Red Eye or D-Man or some of these people, they loved Counter-Strike or Quake or whatever, Call of Duty. But if you asked them, what is your dream job tomorrow? They wouldn't click their fingers and still be, oh, I'm still doing this. Red Eye would have clicked his fingers and he'd suddenly be doing Formula One, and maybe D-Man would be doing football for the BBC or something. So they also sort of saw TV just is the next progression of your career. That's the ultimate like accolade, the ultimate validation. And so there was certainly that middle period where it wasn't just me. It was also people like Richard Lewis. Then, by the way, when we got Yanko, and if you ever saw Yanko, he started out so stiff and straight. He looked like he was going to the prom or something with his dad's fucking suit on. Not like when he got the money, by the way, you can tell the second that money dropped. He came with the big boy, massive watch face, he came with that like 5 o'clock shadow that looks like it right before the stylist just got it ready. He's looking fucking slick. He's got the haircut. And then we cracked him to actually open up that side. And the joke now is he's known to be like a little bit spicy, and Yanko always puts a little bit of mustard on the hot dog, as it were. So I do think in the middle, we all played a part in breaking up the culture in that way and doing the banter style. And obviously Richard Lewis was massively influential in this sense as well. He was often the host, and then he was thrown to me. And also, by the way, here's another thing that's a key concept. I wouldn't have got away with it all on my own. There was a million times where, look, I did this partly on purpose because it's super stressful to be at your top performance. I'm not the sort of guy that wants, you've seen this, I don't want like a random person from the event to come over and start hassling me with something. So just tell fucking Richard about it. He's the host. So I would make Richard like my handler. So I was like fucking, I don't know, like Celine Dion or something. And don't talk to me, talk to my agent, And then they would just bring all the problems to him. And the difference is they would be coming to him sometimes, by the way, and going, look, you gotta control Thorin. He can't make those jokes. And Richard would be like, basically like tank the aggro and just be like, I'll take care of it. But then we'd just do it anyway. He sort of like gave me the space, the freedom he was like the firewall to keep me protected so I could do that sort of thing. But I do think along the way, look, I'll give you an obvious elephant in the room. If you look at when it went from the banter era to like a little bit more of like a formulaic broadcast again, there's a little bit of room for some jokes, but let's not go too crazy. It was the COVID period. It's when we all just went back home. And by the way, at that point, now there's incredible pressure on you at those jobs. Because if you don't have those jobs, you're just back home with everyone else. You're not working any events anymore. And if you notice, the people who got to the top in CS in COVID weren't the top talent before COVID. What happened was a lot of the other people did just stay home. And a lot of the sort of like people on the rise got promoted and then were used. And actually, they also, I think, didn't want to fuck up their first chance. They hadn't had this chance to sort of push the boat out a little bit. So I think a lot of them played it very, very straight. They wanted to be a main blast person who's there with the branding front. They wanted to be in the circle at ESL and never have the person going, is this too much for us or not? They wanted to play it a little bit safe, which is totally understandable. At the time, no one knew how long this would last, if this was just the future of esports. We didn't know any of these things. So I do know what you mean. I feel like we did go through a period where it's a bit like edgy jokes online. Sometimes they're in vogue, sometimes they're not at all. You have to know which year you're in to navigate the space, yeah.
Do you think, I mean, this is, I can pass this to Thorin, but I think Veracity, I'm sure you can weigh in as well. Something else that this has been bugging me actually for a couple of months, and it was starting to get under my skin, is like, so I know obviously my style's a bit spicy and my tone is very flat. So sometimes I make a joke and it just sounds like I'm a right bitch. I'm fine with that. Like, I know that's what happens.
Okay.
I just own it. And I kind of accepted a long time ago that it was actually Thorin who said to me, you got to kind of lean into who you are, and that some people are going to like it, some people aren't. But the thing that I get really worried about is when you do lean into that, obviously the internet has got and social media has got so loud. So now everyone has a freaking opinion. And sometimes I'll make a joke and it hits well. I know it hits well. People are laughing. I'll see a couple of people online, but then there'll be that one person who clips it and they post it on Reddit and HLTV and they talk about how horrible it is. And then obviously everyone jumps in. There'll be 2 or 3 people who'll be like, I thought it was funny, but everyone else will jump in and be like, yeah, she should never work again. She's so unprofessional.
Right.
And then you sit there and you start to panic because you think, well, the people that are hiring me, are they going to see this when you're number one trending on Reddit? So I wonder, I mean, Veracity, have you felt that a bit where you start stressing and you go, oh, like you kind of, you want to do the fan service, but you also want to make sure that you're not getting a hate thread on an HLTV or Reddit. Because as we've seen with Maui, with Kassad, with Pimp, when that happens, you start going, the next time you don't see them in an event, the first thing that everyone says is because of those threads.
Oh,
so
true,
you panic.
yeah. Of course.
Does that ever like get to you a little bit and keep you up at night where you start to stress?
Yeah, honestly, like I end up thinking about it quite a bit, especially before I'm about to go on a broadcast, because in the back of my mind, I'm like, I want to be myself. I don't want to have to filter myself. I don't want to have to not be me at the end of the day. Because I feel like at that point, I'm not having fun. They're not having fun. Nobody's having fun. But also, a very big part of it is like, what if I say something that people are going to take the wrong way? Even it doesn't matter how many times you have the conversation with either your analyst or your guest on the desk and you brief them on what's going on. If the audience perceive it a certain way and they clip it and post it, the first thought in your head is going to be, oh my God, I've just pissed off everybody in production. I've pissed off the sponsors. Like I'm never going to get hired again. But I think all you can really do is kind of trust in the fact that the people that know you will know that that's not how it's intended. They will know that, you know, that's not the way that you meant it to come across or whatever. And I think that's why it's probably so important to have conversations with production beforehand to check the vibe and see if they are okay with jokes and stuff being made. But Thorin, I know you damn well never had to have one of those conversations. You go straight in and you're like, I am what I am.
Sure. Here's the thing though, like I said about Richard, there have been times though, by the way, where even in CS, sometimes it has been perceived as too far, sometimes behind the scenes, by the way. Like I'll give you an example of one. I did a dream hack. Off the top of my head, it might have been like 2015 or something. We did a dream hack. Look at whatever year the film Jurassic World came out. And actually, they had a partnership with Jurassic World, or whoever the film producer is. And so we had to do an ad, which Richard would just read. And on the screen, it would be like, you know, Jurassic World in cinemas now, or whatever. And then when we do that, because obviously when he does that, the second he finishes, I'm going to jump in with some banter. I just kept making, well, first of all, we all kept doing that thing where every time he would start doing it, just to fuck with him, because it's dream hack, we'd all start going, that like iconic theme. And then also, I was just doing stuff like making my banter, riffing on the movie. So at one point I was like, well, speaking of dinosaurs in esports, Richard, that you didn't expect to ever see anymore, Slasher on Twitter with the score esports. And then we had like simultaneously like someone complaining from like Jurassic World, like, please don't make jokes negatively about other people with the sponsor. And then also the score esports was like, we're sponsoring this event. Why is he bringing up that? Please do not ever mention our people get. So even I've had the time where it happens. But on the fan one, I think it's about how you frame it though. Look, one is if you don't like that, I would genuinely suggest during the event, make your social media app a one-way device. It's just you send a message out, you don't read the replies. Listen, if you want to go crazy on that, do it when you're at home with a bottle of Jameson or something. I wouldn't do it at the event because I've seen people have a good mood and then I've seen them open that phone, and the worst is where I see them scroll to the bottom of that Reddit and click plus on the down, and I've seen their face drop, and then you talk to them and you're like, oh, you fucked up your whole vibe, mate. You've let this guy get in your head, like, oh, fuck. So what I do is, first of all, I try not to read that anyway, but also I have this framing mechanism I use, which makes it not that bad. It goes like this. I come from the era where the only people on broadcast, except play-by-play, the Red Eyes, the D-Mans, and Joe Miller, are all former professionals. The idea you could ever be an analyst and you're just some guy who watched the game and was never even good, that is like an alien concept. So I've come full circle. I used to be the guy just sat at home watching going, fuck, put me in, I'd say better than that. I am back there now, by the way, still going, fuck shit. Well, maybe don't put me in, but I couldn't do better than that. It's like, so I know what it's like to be the guy where it's like, if they take this away from me, mate, I already came from that. You know what I mean? I came out the money. Don't worry about it. I'll go back if I need to. And also, I find a way to flip it. And I think of it like the little boy pulling the pigtails of the girl that he obviously likes in the playground. You wouldn't go and fuck with the one you don't like. So what I also think is this. It's like, as long as they keep saying my name, they can say is an idiot, is an arsehole, shouldn't have worked again. But I told Maui this. Maui, the ultimate success, bro, is when you don't work the event and the whole thread's like, I'm glad that Maui isn't hired. Like, Maui would have just fucked it up. He'd have said a shit joke and that's like, bro, you're in their head. You exist as a fucking character. So, no joke, one of the actual most validating parts of my broadcast career was, remember, the last major I did was 2021. The next 3 majors, I think it was Antwerp, Rio, and I think maybe even Blast Paris. People went to the event with signs saying stuff like, where is Thorin? Fuck Thorin. And the producers even showed it on camera. And I was just sat at home like, this is fucking, I'm not even doing this anymore. I'm still like part of the convo, I'm part of the event. And the joke on the joke on the Copenhagen one is that had an even more ridiculous one. Remember, JL was the MVP of the major. His gun skin had stickers spelling out Thorin's small dick as he was winning the major MVP. I'm like, bro, you think this is a diss to me? You don't even get it. Like, that is mental. I used to be the guy sat at home watching majors. I was never on the fucking gun of Forest like, Darren, like, that's fucking sick in its own way. So it's all, you know, I think if you reframe things, you can sort of take some of the sting out of it a little bit. But I am also a strange human.
I feel like it's so people don't really understand how much it actually does affect.
Oh yeah,
their
everyone.
Mental. Like,
yeah,
I've seen talents before during the event with Twitch chat on their phone during the broadcast, fucking reading everything everyone is saying, and I can't wrap my head around it. And every single time, I'll be like, "Do not ruin your vibe because you're just about to get on camera." All it takes is for one person to be like, this person is making too many jokes, or this person is talking too much, or whatever. And then suddenly they start overthinking every single interaction they have.
I've been really good. I never, funny enough, it was Red Eye years ago who told me never open Twitch chat, which is ironic because he opened Twitch chat on every broadcast. But,
I love it. I love it. Classic.
That's one thing I don't do. And the only reason with Twitch chat for me, and I don't know, I think like they comment on everyone's appearance, but I feel like with women, they are far worse. So I can't win. Like if you think that I'm super ugly, like I can't change that. It is what it is. So Twitch chat, I find mainly talks about my appearance. So if I don't open it, I don't know that you've decided that like I'm an ugly human. But I do struggle a bit with like, if I see an HLTV forum about me,
it's like tech girl come here. And then you're like, do I click it?
And I always do. No,
don't do it. Don't do it.
But the reason I do, and I'm going to justify this, and it's terrible, I'm just feeding an addiction, is because I can't believe I love HLTV forums. And I know that everyone thinks this is shocking. It is a cesspool of horrible trolls.
Oh, of course.
You know
it's like 4chan for Counter-Strike. Yeah, I know. It's true.
Holy hell, sometimes they say funny shit. And like it's cool and it's mean. But sometimes I will read a comment and so I love to go in because I always know I'll giggle. The problem is when it's about me, I go in and I hope I'll giggle, and you normally come out of it being like having a complete mental breakdown because it's never. But that was why I always just go there. And then everyone's always like, just don't go on HLTV. And I was like, but I can't. It's like an addiction.
It's your guilty pleasure, right? Okay.
Do you do it after the event or during?
Always. If I'm not going to lie, during 9 times out of 10. Normally at home, like after the day. So I try not to do it while I'm on the desk because something like could happen. Unless I say something I know is pretty edgy, then I'll just go to get like a vibe check, you know, to know if like for the rest of the day I have to like tone it down a little bit just to save face. But it'll normally be like after work, which is the worst time to do it because you're on this like super downer, you're exhausted, and then I'll be like,
by yourself as well, and then it's a pit of like, oh no, yeah.
And then I always, and I'm trying to not do this. I don't know if you do this, Veracity, as a host. If someone's like really mean about one of my analysts and I think they did a good job that day, I get really upset. Like, so if I see like bad threads about analysts who I think freaking nailed it that day, I'll get upset because I feel like I didn't do my job as a host then if they were made to look bad. Unless they like pitched up unprepared, then I'm like, yeah, well, so I wasn't the only one who saw that. But for the most part, I'll normally I'll get a bit upset and just be like, shit, my job is to make them look good, and if they looked bad, like I kind of take that on myself, which I'm trying to get over because I've realized I can't actually do that. But I do get way too invested in those threads, and I think a lot of talent do. All the talent that, again, so many talent tell me not to do it, and then I watch them do it right next to me in a green room. So does that ever like get under your skin, or do you avoid it completely? Have you figured out how to do that, Veracity?
Honestly, I avoid it completely. I don't do the Twitch chat. I don't do the HLTV. I don't do the Reddit because I know in my head, all I'm thinking the entire time is like, if I see any of it, it's going to mess me up for tomorrow. But I'm going to be doubting myself the entire time. And all I want to do is be able to be myself and have fun. But I will say the one thing that destroys me is when people tweet at me and at me in it, or they DM me. Because at that point, the notification pops up and I can't avoid it.
Right.
And when I got announced for Elisa, my God, I was getting DMs from people being like, who the fuck are you? We want banks. I had people like adding me in the tweets being like, who even are you? You don't even know anything about CS. And I'm just, it got to me. I'm not
Listen,
gonna lie.
I apologize. We shouldn't work together at the time, but after working with you, you are pretty good. You're almost as good as Max.
Thanks, Thorin. I appreciate it.
So that's so weird though. So you know what I'm like actually quite fine with, and I don't know why. When someone sends me like a mean tweet, like I'll read it and be like asshole, and then I'll laugh and normally just block them.
Okay.
For some reason, like those don't affect me.
Okay.
I'll be upset about it for like a minute, and then I'll just be like, "Lol, jokes on you." Like I'll just block you or mute you. What you gonna do? But yeah, like the forums, I always feel because there's like a step between us. But I do also wonder if this comes down to the fact that, and this is maybe some for people watching at home, like we're talking from a talent point of view. We get no feedback from the people that hire us.
Oh my God. Yeah. The amount of times I've asked for feedback and they're like, we'll let you know. And then you don't hear anything.
Yeah.
So you pitch up for this job. And especially like for those of us that are, I suppose, more new. And I actually don't even think, I think it's everyone feels this way, even if you were shocked, is that you arrive, you do this job, you work your ass off, then you finish the job and you say, do you have any feedback for me? And the response from your clients is always, no, like you did a great job. We're very happy. And then maybe you get hired again, maybe you don't, but that's the last you hear about it. And then when you don't get hired, you're like, well, were you happy? Because why didn't I get hired for the next one? I don't understand. If you don't get hired and you ask why you didn't get hired, you don't normally hear anything back. Like there's literally no feedback. And I don't cope well with that. Like I want someone to sit down and go, so I actually like, I've kind of forced the hand of producers that I've worked with quite a bit now, where I've just been like, please, like, I need you to say something. Don't just keep telling me good job. Like, tell me there must be something that's bugging you. Cause like there has to be something that I can work on. And I have found that like in the last few months, I've had producers I've worked with say to me, right, like your throws are a little bit too sharp. Like you kind of just, it's a 10-second thing and you don't give me enough time to prep after I've said to you that it's time to throw to break. Or like, I need this to be a little bit clearer when you do like little things like that, which is like, okay, that I can actually do. Or I have a terrible habit of looking all over the place when I talk, as opposed to like looking at the camera I'm supposed to be looking at, things like that. So they've said to me, listen, instead of looking at the players behind you all the bloody time and like stop looking at the cameraman running around, like look here. That sort of stuff I appreciate, but it does bug me that there's no feedback in this industry as to from the people that make the hiring decisions as to whether or not there's something you can improve on. And then I think it feeds into that stress that we were talking about, where you see a negative comment about you on the internet and you're like, good God, I'm messing up. And then you don't want to be yourself and you don't want to do anything because you're so
people
terrified.
are thinking that, like maybe my boss is thinking that basically, right?
Yeah. So then you end up like completely becoming a shell of yourself. And like Veracity said, then you're not really yourself, right? And you're trying to play it safe all the time. And then the broadcast boring as hell and you don't get hired anyway.
You know what I started to do more, and I did it at Elisa as well, is I've started trusting the people that I'm working with a lot more to provide me with that feedback. I literally said to Thorin and Richard, by the way, if you guys have any feedback with anything you think I should change or anything like that for the next day, let me know. Because the people that are there with you in amongst all of the chaos, they get it. They know that you always want to be improving at what you're doing. And that's only going to happen if you're honest with each other. Like, I know that there are some people that will say like, I want feedback, I want to do better. But as soon as someone critiques them, they get butthurt about it. And they're like, oh, well, actually, no, that's not what happened because X, Y, Z, and you're wrong. So then it's like, do you actually want to improve or like, I'm confused.
By the way, that's literally even something we did do at the event, by the way. Like, for example, she did an interview really early on where she tried to come with high energy and it just fell flat. But it actually was nothing to do with what she was doing. It's just that the crowd, barely anyone was there. And if you don't know the Finnish crowd, it's just the Finnish people, I've lived there. They have to have a few drinks before they sort of open up. So they were just all shy at the moment, you know, whereas when she brought that sip, so we were just telling, no, just keep doing that though. Like, bring the same energy. And as you saw in that event, as the event went on, especially because Ents was doing well, they responded loads by the end. Like, it was like an electric crowd. No, that's a real thing. What were you going to say, Sam?
I was going to say, it's a real thing what you're saying, though, about people who aren't really looking for feedback. They're just looking for validation.
Oh, definitely.
And I do think that, like, a lot of talents, because I asked so many analysts for so long, like, analysts that I love working with, like, give me feedback.
They're scared to tell you anything, I'll bet they were.
And they'd always just be like, everything's fine, everything's fine. And then, funny enough, at the Shanghai Major, Maui was like, okay, And then he gave me feedback. And then Yanko went, okay, you want feedback? And he gave me, and I was so happy.
Okay,
It
everyone's
just takes
jumping
one
in.
person.
Right.
Yeah, but I was so happy because both of them finally like gave me stuff. I was like,
Right.
yeah, I can actually work with this.
Yeah.
And like, this is, Scorny's really good with that. Like Scorny will always give you like feedback and you'll be like, shit, yeah, I can work with this. But I do find like a lot of people are too afraid to say anything because not like we've all seen it. Like you mentioned, there's always that one person who they don't want feedback. They just want everyone to tell them how great they are. Right?
Exactly.
So it does become
Fishing
this
for
weird bubble.
compliments. Exactly.
Yeah, you just spend your entire time being like in this room, being like, I don't actually know if I'm doing a good job or if I'm absolutely crap. And
by the way, you get into a very famous concept. I can tell you, even people like Shocks sometimes still have imposter syndrome. That is a massive part of talent work.
You do, but that's the thing. You sit there the whole time being like, well, I don't know.
Absolutely.
And then also like, do you know how many times I've come up with like a line that I thought was funny? And then I'll say it and then be like, oh my God, did I just completely cross the line? Like, should I never have done that?
Right,
should I,
right.
you know, because that, and I think that's the thing.
See, I've done the first part. I've never had that second part of the equation. Maybe I'm just a different person.
That.
You know? No.
Like,
I've never had that thought afterwards. Yeah, shit, was that too far?
I did work, and this is it was a South African tournament organizer, which was like ahead of their time, I think, but they bought this in from a producer who'd worked in TV, which was at the end of a broadcast every single day. He would bring all the talents together and he would make everyone say the one thing that they were like their day, what they absolutely loved about the day and what they were really disappointed in. And that was a really interesting way for people to, one, call out other people for their bullshit in like a really polite way. But also too, like it was cool because you'd be like, okay, what did I feel didn't work today? Like what was the one thing that really didn't go well? And you could say like, hey, listen, you know, production went absolutely silent for 5 minutes and we had no cooking clue what was going on and that was really shit. And then you would always preface it with something that you like enjoyed, so it was positive. But I found that was at least some form of getting feedback.
Love that. Whereas, why don't we do that?
It's good, yeah.
This is what I mean.
That's like a good idea.
We do so many debriefs in esports after the broadcast is done. And I shit you not, the debrief ends up being like an hour and a half. And at the end of it, I'll just be like, okay, so then what did we recap? And you don't actually know. Because I'm not being given the feedback that I need in order to make sure tomorrow is better and to make sure that the grand finals is absolutely phenomenal. Like, yeah, we'll have a debrief and we'll be like, okay, yeah, we need the graphics up a bit quicker, or I need more comms in my ear before we go on stage or before we go live and whatever. The interviews need to be shorter or longer, but you're not giving the actual feedback that's going to help improve the show. And I think that's kind of what frustrates me. And I think a part of that might be the fact that, I don't know, I can't help but feel like production don't really want to throw you off your game or upset you. But I'm like, no, please, like, how else are we going to improve as a team on broadcast?
I'll give you an angle. Another problem, if you get to know the producers, is almost nobody who works in production at any of the big TOs in CS was ever talent on camera themselves. It's its own space. It's its own techniques. Sometimes they don't even know. Like, for example, I'm not just throwing jokes at things. Like, I'm doing a joke to set up an analytical point and then to pass to him. You know, like sometimes they're not aware of what you're doing there. They might think you're going off script. There's another reason, by the way, where they don't always like banter and impromptu stuff. They want to stick to their timing. Like, by the way, sometimes they're literally got a boss in their ear. Like, you better hit that break on exactly that moment. So they've got their own stresses that's going on. They just want you to just do ABC, please, like we agreed to, you know. So I can see their point of view too, but I think sometimes they can't see our point of view. Like, I'll give you an example. I did do a couple of events, Gfinity and like an ESG event once, where Red Eye was essentially not only like talent. In fact, for Gfinity, he wasn't even talent. He was like the producer / host and the top guy at the company, made all the creative decisions. And he would come to you and say stuff like, you can use the we had one of those like weatherman segment thing. Like, can you use that more, please? Because we just like develop that tech, and I think you could. You're making the same point, but why not showcase it on the screen? That's stuff you want. You want someone to tell you if they want that from the broadcast. I'm not going to guess it. I'm not going to intuit it out of mine because I'm focused on doing my shit as well. Yeah, I think that's a factor. I think a lot of those people, if you ever talk to them, they're just in their own little world getting their job done. You know, they think, by the way, in a weird way, they're trusting you. They're going, look, I'm sure you know what you're doing, so I don't want to fucking step on your toes. You do your job. I'll just slot it into the time frame. I'll push the button. You know, and if we all get alive. If at the end of the day, the final ends, the confetti comes down, we say thanks to the sponsors, lift the trophy, and the credits roll. Oh, thank God, right, phew, there's another event in the books, right, I'm not fired. They're also thinking that sometimes. Yeah. It's not always that they're, you know, on some ivory tower.
I think it's that. And also, like, for them, I suppose there must also be a point of like, okay, cool, but you are paid to do this job. So it's not really my job to now try and help improve you during this. I kind of need you to pick up where you are and do what you need to do.
We also get paid a lot more than them sometimes too as well. Yeah, so they might even just think, fuck you, hey, you'll get 5 times what I am. Why am I telling you to do it? Yeah.
And also, I think that something that I do think that producers actually in modern day CS events don't actually have much of a say of who the talent is. Like, I get the
Right.
impression that a lot of the live
Right.
producers we work with, they get told this is who you're working with. And
Yes.
I am sure I will put my head on a chopping block that sometimes they look at those names and go, oh, crap.
Well, I can tell you, Sam,
for sure.
think about this. When I didn't work with ESL for a while, for obvious reasons, back in the 2014-15 era, I was talking mad shit about the whole broadcast on all my shows, on the Twitter. I can tell you it was some higher up ESL exec who brought me back and had me hired. And when I walked in that room, look, I'm me, so I just swagged it out anyway. But I could feel some of those people were sort of like, why the fuck is he? Hello, Thorin. It's nice to have you back. Yeah, it's going to be great to have you on. I could tell this guy's like hating on me. Like, he's been hating on my broadcast. That's my fucking job. So, no, some of them definitely are sort of like, you weren't my first choice, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, like, it's like I wouldn't have chosen you. And also, I'm sure that sometimes I'll never forget when I got that blast major. Like, it was pretty clear I was coming in. I knew that I was experienced in other games, but I was way inexperienced in doing. I shouldn't have been doing a major. Like, I'm well aware. And I had no doubt in my mind, because those blast producers are mad experienced. They're some of the best in the biz. I am sure that they looked and went, shit. Like,
They
we
pulled
know
a
that
forum. They pulled like one of those reactions to the talent announcement.
I'm sure they must have been like, damn it. But like, you know what I mean? Because they know that now you're coming into the major, which is their biggest event. Like, it is the biggest event in Counter-Strike. And we're bringing in an unknown entity. And yes, you can see she's done PUBG and FIFA and all these other jobs, but this is our major. This is our baby that we have to produce. What is she like? What's her personality like? We've never worked with her. What happens if she comes here and she freezes? Because now suddenly, as the producer, you're like, I think this is specifically a relationship between producer and host. You kind of, you're much closer than everyone else because you have to work together. I'm sure they were going, damn, shout out to Mikkel, by the way, who had to like hold my hand through that whole thing. I'm sure he was like, shit, now I got stuck with this. If she screws this up, like, I'm going to look bad,
Right.
you know? So
Do you think that's actually the case, or do you think that might be imposter syndrome kind of making you feel that way?
I mean, I think it's the case, but I don't think any of them will say it because they're all really nice. Or maybe it's imposter syndrome.
So I'll tell you what Sam's superpower is, but she doesn't know, is that she actually feels imposter syndrome in many, many different aspects of her job and her personality. But she pushes through anyway. The superpower is to push through anyway. That is actually it's not that you're always as confident as you appear, but you fake it till you make it. And if you do the good job, by the way, it's like you said, you've actually nailed, by the way, that people aren't picking up on it, Sam. They think it's the opposite. They think you're just a cold bitch who doesn't care. And you just you'll say anything. And it's like, oh, they shouldn't even care what we think. Like, you've actually broken through. That means they're not picking up on that. You're having that sensation, but they're not getting that, I don't think.
Let's just completely like shift now because we all work in Counter-Strike desks.
Oh, I have one
so
last thing to say that. I've just got one more point, because this actually could also help people who are in your position when they come into CS, which is because you said you don't get any feedback. And as you said, even if you ask someone, think about this. It's like going to a new office. I've just started working here. I want everyone to like me. I want them. Imagine going to them. Give me some feedback, right? If I'm someone who works in that office, it's like, right, what you're actually asking me is, do I want to risk things just being okay as they are now? So I'll say, yeah, it's fine, you're doing a good job. Or do I want to tell someone potentially something that they could really improve, but might make them hate me forever? And now I've just made an enemy in my office. I have to work with them every day and I have to have a relationship. You can see where for some people that calculus goes, I'll just go with the safe option. That's why in both of your careers, one thing I try to do when I see people I think are good on camera and they're doing early CS gigs is I don't do the one where I give them like the negative aspect because you don't know if they want that criticism. I just try to find the one thing that I've noticed that they're doing a really good job in and just give them send them a DM, some positive reinforcement. That thing you're doing is really good, or we didn't have this in CS before. By the way, other people who are talent, we go a million miles from you guys, but also pro players. If you do that, you will also actually, if you don't know, if you haven't seen studies even on animals, positive reinforcement gets the behavior you want because it's incentivizing rather than just like negative reinforcement. That's hit and miss as to whether that works or not. So it goes a long way if you send someone like a message like that where you just find something positive and you amplify that, because then they know like that could be a touchstone. I know I'm killing that part. That part's good. Okay, I am succeeding. I'm not an imposter.
Do you know when you talk about that positive reinforcement, though, someone who does this incredibly well, if you ever work with him on a broadcast, is Scrawny. Like every day he will come off and he will go to someone and tell them something they did during the show that he really liked. Like he'll be like, you know when you said
this guy sounds too good now. I'm starting to hate him. It sounds like Mr. Rogers or something. Fuck, okay.
And he'll say like, you know this, and this is what always blows my mind because like obviously he's not commentating every single game that day, but he'll go to someone who was commentating the early game when he wasn't even in, and he'll go, line where you said this, I thought that was brilliant. And I'm like, this
Right.
dude is actually sitting, like actually watching all of us. And when he says it, it's sincere because
Mm-hmm.
you know he didn't have to be up watching that, which is cool because that also helps a bit because he always like makes you feel good when you leave after he said like a nice
Sure.
thing. So I think he's really clever there. He keeps the vibes going. But I wanted to completely twist because we're talking about Counter-Strike. Let's just talk about the CS desks because this is something that I always find quite fascinating. Obviously, in the last few years, the comment is always that no one watches the desk anymore, right?
Despite all the million Reddit threads, the hate comments, I know it's. Wait, my favourite one ever, by the way, Sam, is this. I mute the desk and don't watch. They then have an encyclopedic knowledge of everything you said they didn't like on the desk. It's like, methinks the lady doth protest too much on this one. I think you are watching the desk. Come on, guys.
You think that I do worry a little bit though that I wonder that maybe desks are becoming a bit stale. Like, are we at risk of them just? And we're going to see it this year. Like, there's no longer B stream desks on a lot of the big broadcasts. They're starting to do away with the desk. Do you think we've kind of lost the beauty of it and lost the appreciation of what it actually brings to a broadcast?
Truly, I will say the one thing that I feel like will kill it off is if they start to kind of filter people and suppress them and say act super professional. Because then when at the end of the day, from a broadcast perspective, when you sit down, when it's end stream and you look at the numbers and they dive into all of that stuff, it's going to be no surprise that the gamers that are watching online are not going to be entertained during that desk segment. You got to sit down and think, why could that be? It's not because you guys as analysts are not making valid points. It's not that at all. It's the fact that you're forcing us to have a suit and tie approach, to be super stiff, to be super rigid. When at the end of the day, what do people go to Twitch to do? It's to watch streamers. Why do they watch streamers? Because they're entertaining, because they make them feel like they're sat amongst friends, they're having a conversation. It's very back and forth. I think that's the one thing that's going to kill it off, is if you continue forcing this sense of super professional, not room for jokes and banter and what have you. That'll be the thing that makes it not entertaining whatsoever. And that'll be the thing that ruins desks.
This show is an example of what I said earlier, the principle of you dress for the job you want. Because basically, Sam, she created the whole show, the whole concept, what it would be, the idea that it'd be a topic that's something relevant to fans. Essentially, it's the equivalent of what they'd be talking about on HLTV forums after the tournament or something. And the idea, I assume, was she wanted TOs to realise, I can do this on the desk too, you know. It's not just like, and here we come from the break. And so, analysts, what do you think of Team 1? And Team B just added a player. I think one of the things she was trying to do was capture the idea of the elephant in the room. What is the topic we all really want to talk about? It's not really that like Nip lost this game. It's that everyone thinks the Nip Hawks like cynical now, or they don't buy players. What does this mean for the future? And should fans even care about Nip? That's the edgy question, but that's probably what everyone wants to hear in the break. Remember, the commentators did the whole game. They've already broke the whole fucking thing down live as we do it. So I do often think the mistake people make is, I think the best example of this ever is in actually sports. So the biggest sport in England, obviously, is football. It's the most iconic sport ever. And that used to literally, until something like 3 or 4 years ago, it's basically until Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville developed that amazing like chemistry on Sky Sports. It used to be former pros sat literally in blazers, in chairs, awkwardly, one by one, taking a turn to go, well, you know, it's a game of two halves. He's going to do a better job in the second half. Just fucking drivel. And by the way, even though these are like the best players ever, it wasn't like insane analysis. It was just blather. And that is not what anyone in the pub was talking about when they're watching that game. In fact, I can tell you that's when you'd go to the bar and get the pint, because it's fucking boring, isn't it? He's just talking about, yeah, we know it's 1-0 down. They're going to score, mate. We get it. That's the game. Whereas I think what has revolutionized football broadcast, and I think this will become the norm, get ready, is that American one. Because for the American audience, they do the CBS Galazzo, where they get the same people and there's almost fuck all analysis. It's just jokes and banter and making fun of things and silly things like the player didn't get a good lineup on his haircut and it's a bit off, you know, and he paid 200 quid for that. Or, you know, when I used to play, I would have beaten him. Oh, you've never won this championship. Oh, it's all that shit, you know. And that, by the way, people eat that up. In fact, it's gone the other way, where now they put those clips on YouTube and people who didn't even watch the fucking game watch it the next day and go, for the skit, because the skit transcends the match. It's not an relic within it. So to me, I've always thought, you have 2 hours for the commentators and the analysts to break the game down in the game, or before the game, you do a lot of that. Between, I actually think you should have sort of like an entertainment segment, like let's take something funny out that game, or let's take something big but make it a big topic, like who is the best AWPer? And hey, Yanko, I believe you think Shiro's overrated, but he just dropped a 30 bomb. So how do you explain that? You do shit like that where you fuck with them a little bit. You like make them have to like answer something where there's going to have like banter potential. I think to me, that's the desk I want to see. I'm always telling people if they do a good job in that sense, I'm always in their DMs. I keep doing that. Don't let them stop you doing that. You're fucking killing it. It's why, even though I know all the modern fans hate him because they see him as like the fucking ultimate avatar of boomerism in TS. I love fucking Kassad on a desk because he can't help but say something ridiculous. In fact, if you ever watch Hot Take Point Made, he comes up with the best hot takes by accident while just justifying a mild take because he's just a ridiculous human as he is. So you'd never want to put a filter on Kassad. Don't hire Kassad if you want to do that. Let him go on and say some outrageous shit. Like the team that just won the tournament should fire the in-game leader because he thinks he's overrated. I want in the room. By the way, there are people on the HLTV forums doing that thread anyway. They're on the anger. So why not do it on the broadcast and connect the culture?
I love Kassad for that, but I also think what makes Kassad great is he does those ridiculous comments and he does play the boomer angle. But then every so like in between that, he peppers it with like actual knowledge because he has huge amounts of insight behind the scenes.
Kassad, actual knowledge? What?
No, the thing is, so you're right. You've got to sort of like sugar the pill, though. You can't just give them the pure analysis. You've got to sort of like do the bullshit angle and then slip a bit in there. Like, this is some real analysis. Yeah.
It's super interesting though, because when you look at the throwbacks to the Richard Lewis hosting the Desk and Machine, when you had Yanko and Sponge and Thorin in the mix, there was that banter and it was really funny because I remember those were like my favorite segments to watch. Then we've kind of tempered away from that, but actual traditional sports has gone, shit, we should probably bring more of that in. So it just shows you, like, I do think that there is space to play around a little bit more and have a bit more fun. But it kind of leads me to my last question though. Why? I don't know if I can do this because, like, I mean, Thorin
you can
will
do
answer.
anything you want. Go for it. Where's
this going? Fucking hell. Okay, come on.
Why are analysts so afraid about saying things about players that they consider mean? Like, I've noticed there's a trend now where analysts don't want to. They've said to me, I don't want to be that negative. I don't want to be negative. I don't want to talk about how this person's playing. Like, they are scared to upset players, and it concerns me because
players more than fans. You nailed it. Yep.
It Definitely. Is they are so afraid to upset players. And I'm like, but players know this is our job. I've said some pretty mean, they know. Like, and if you preface this with like actual how they've played in the game, they know when they played like shit. They're not going to be upset. But I have seen a trend that there is now a fear to speak badly. Why do you think that is?
Honestly, I think it's probably the fear that as soon as a player tweets out something ludicrous that an analyst has said, might not even be ludicrous, might be factually correct. They could have played like complete shit, and it's just taken one analyst to say that and point it out. They get butthurt about it and tweet it out. And suddenly you have all of the fan base from the organization, from the player themselves, targeting the analyst. And I think that's probably where the fear comes from.
No, it's definitely a real thing. By the way, when they do that, it's like lighting the fucking beacons of whatever that shit was in Lord of the Rings. Suddenly all the hordes just come over the hill, and then again, your notifications are over then. Because remember, to the fan, but he is better at the game than you, so you must be wrong. Like, even if, by the way, you're saying the opinion they were saying 5 minutes ago, because their player just, no, that's not true. Also, another angle, this is mad underrated, is a lot of people who were the pros, a lot of them weren't the best pro themselves before they were an analyst. Or if they're me and Maui and people like that, we weren't even pros. So I'm sorry, on a human level, they don't want fucking Forrest to hate them. Or like fucking Donk, they want these guys to come up to them at the after party and go like, I've always loved watching you on the broadcast. Can I have a drink with you or something? They also want to be mates. They want to have a fun time at the after party and the socializing and stuff. They don't want it to be like Thorin, where when I go to the hotel, look, I do just walk and I go, we walk in, going up to the floor. There's my room, 517. But as I'm walking past, you don't think it's awkward where the door opens on one of the doors as I'm walking down the corridor. And it's the guy I've just said, like, fucking cut this guy. He's shit. He's never been good at this game. He opens the door. It's like,
you know, in a lift with them.
Shall I tell you a story? Here's a good one. It's a Henry G story. But you know what? Enough years, statute of limitations passed on this one. It's about fucking 8 years later. Henry absolutely, accidentally, like some out of fucking Peep Show or something, just absolutely did me so brutally like that. We were at a Star Series event, right? And this is how long ago this story is. It's when the team North, who was the second best Danish team, brought in this player called Mertz to be their AWPer.
Oh my God, I remember him.
Yeah, and he hadn't been in the game very long at the top level. He just played it like, I think he was in like an academy team or something before this. So because they took a big gamble on him, and he's playing the AWP, like one of the like hit or miss roles, and if you're not good, it's going to be obvious he didn't play well enough. At the tournament, I kept criticizing him, like, I wouldn't pick this guy up. There's other AWPers you can get. Like, let a smaller team try a player like that out. You see if they're good, then you pick them up in 6 months. And then when he did badly in the game, he's done bad, right? It just so happened he had like the one pop-off game at the tournament, and I'm going back to the hotel after my segment, and then I get in the elevator, And it's me and Henry just talking. Yeah, anybody, what do you think about the game? You can come for a drink later on. And as we go up, it's like one of those stories, like we go to like floor 2, and on gets like the coach of North and Mertz. And it's just all 4 of us in really small like, Ukrainian elevator, one of those tiny ones, right? And we're stood there. Now I'm just going to be British and go, hello? And just wait for like, I'm looking at that fucking counter like the opposite of a bomb. I'm waiting for it to go up to my number so I can fucking get off. I'm just watching that like, this is awkward. Henry doesn't know what's just happened with that whole drama online, and he doesn't know this guy just had an awesome game. But he just only knows the guy had an awesome game. So Henry, being an extrovert, just says to the Mertz guy, brilliant game. I thought you played very well. You're a young player, but that was a great showing. And then Mertz just goes, well, I'm not sure Thorin would think that. And then this is where Henry's absolutely done me, right? Obviously, he's then sort of like trying to sort of put it on me. Then Henry goes, why? What's he said? And I'm just looking at him like, are you having a fucking laugh right now? Why are you fucking provoking this? Yeah, so I can tell you, even for me, that got fucking awkward.
What did you say? What did you say, Thorin?
No, in that scenario, I was just like, well, you got to give it up. He did have a good game, didn't he, Henry? Maybe I've been critical in the past, but let's see if this is the start of a beautiful... It wasn't, by the way. You've never heard of him. He didn't do great after that. Thorin was right all along, but unfortunately, thanks to Henry G, I had a fucking nightmare experience in an elevator. And actually, beyond that, I will say that's where the players, you'll often hear me big them up on shows. The ones I have mad respect for are the ones who actually get it. The ones, like, I'll give you an example. This might blow your mind if you've seen the tweets I've done. Literally, Fallen gets it and always got it. As in, at events, even the events where I'm flaming them, he would come over and be like, come and join us for a drink, or be talking to us like, and it would never be about the event, by the way. It'd be stuff like, how you doing, or what's going on? What do you think about like our team? Should we change something, whatever? Like, he understood the thing you do on the show is broadcast and entertainment. And sometimes if you do shit, you have to take your licks. Just like if you do awesome, we're going to be glazing you out. We're going to be go fucking crazy, making you sound like the greatest things since sliced bread. So some of them get it. And also there's another aspect. Notice I always try to say from their perspective, which is a lot of pros have never ever done anything like desk work. In fact, it's even worse because they don't know it's a skill set. They really think like, get him off. I'd be way better. It's like, bro, you choked the second the camera went on. You wouldn't even fucking know how to pick up and throw. You don't know how to say something concisely in one. The pro where you have an awesome question. So why did they do that? He thinks it's like a 20-minute demo session. Well, you have to understand the way they do their T-sides. You've got 20 seconds here. Like, they don't know that. So I'll tell you what, loads of them that I criticised would then come on the desk with me a few years later. And what they all say to a man after the first event finishes is, I actually have to like either apologize or give you guys credit. This is way harder than I thought. And I actually had no idea like what was going on. And I realized now I can't just say a generic opinion, or what's the point in even being here, basically. So yeah, unfortunately, to have the spice, it does come with the downside that it could absolutely essentially be like you're like public enemy number 1 that day. Yeah, for sure.
But to keep in mind that you would be public enemy number 1, but that's the one time the player would remember your name, which is what you desperately want. So
yeah, here's the thing. Listen, when I die, Fallen will just go like, fucking asshole. That might be the last thought that goes to his head. Yeah. He'll probably criticize me for dying too soon, bloody dickhead. Just like in the game, Yeah, exactly. And listen, again, by the way, that's also why I said earlier, that's why you have to flip the narrative. So I had Simple the GOAT flame me, and it was like the top thread on HLT, on CSGO Reddit with like 20,000 points. You don't think about that. You have to do it like that joke of like the fucking Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not that I got flamed. It's like, wait a minute, Simple's talking about me. He's the GOAT. You have to get in on it yourself. That's actually fucking sick. The GOAT's talking about me on Twitter. I'm some fucking guy from England who's like, nice game, mate. Up more. Like, it's actually kind of cool to even be in there. Recognition. Yeah.
There we go. Just flip the switch. Change it all. Always look for the positive. Who knew that was going to be the bit of advice you got from Thorin? That's my
philosophy.
That's your philosophy. On that note, we'll be back soon for another episode.